surprise video. Yes, this week is going to be an earlier video talking about the Chinese pangolin, solely because I'm going on vacation to the Everglades this Friday, so congrats. We have to expedite this entire video, and it has been a nightmare. But since that's not really why you're here, let's talk about the animal in question, the Chinese pangolin, a very unique animal that is mostly found in the southern parts of China, pretty much being cut off by the Yangtze River, while also being native to parts of northern Vietnam, northern Laos, most of Myanmar, parts of Thailand, and pretty much into the valleys of northeast India, Bhutan, and Nepal. Now, while there are 8 different species of pangolin, I'm going to kind of be generalizing the species as a whole. While there is going to be a little bit of information about the Chinese pangolin in specifics, since it is the only species we have in the game, I figured this would be a good opportunity to speak about the entirety of the species of pangolin. And mostly because there's nothing really to compare this species to, seeing how the pangolin is the last of its entire order. And for those of you who are not versed in the kind of scientific nomenclature of how, the taxonomical list goes, it pretty much goes like this. Using a dog as example, from top to bottom, we will be starting with Eukaryota, which pretty much separates them from things like viruses, bacteria. Then the kingdom of Animalia, which obviously they're animals, not plants or fungus. Then it would be the phylum of Chordata, which pretty much is all vertebrates, so we're not going to have things like slugs or insects going to be in that. Class of Mammalia, which means they're mammals. And then the order of Carnivora, so that's where the split off is for the common dog, pretty much any carnivorous animal. However, the pangolin had separated from the carnivorans, which literally means the closest ancestor still alive is any carnivorous mammal. Literally, that's how far back we have to go to get a living relative of this creature. A separation that happened roughly 80 million years ago during the age of dinosaurs. Seeing how the age of dinosaurs ended 65 million years ago, it just goes to show that this is a very strange and very unique creature when it comes to our Zoopedia. Now, the animal itself, the pangolin, evolved roughly 37.9, so let's just round up to 38 million years ago, separating into pretty much the only modern scaled mammal that we know of. Now, the species that they are a part of are actually the Palaean odontocellular, which consists of insectivorous mammals from the Paleocene era. So, other species in this clade would consist of the extinct Metacaryomiidae, which was somewhat of an anteater-looking species from North America and Europe, the badger-like Arianodon from Mongolia and northern China, and some other shrew-like species. It essentially had a lot of convergent evolution with mammals that we would know of in the modern era. For that unique taxonomical portion of the video, which is probably the most scientific I might get into this, however, who knows with some of these other ones, maybe there's something more to go into. Let's speak about the exhibit before we get further into the history and conservation of this animal. So I decided to do something unique so far with our series, and essentially I am creating a 3-sectioned area that can only be viewed by the viewing bubbles. Now, each location is going to have its own biome. See, the Chinese pangolin has 3 major subspecies, and I felt like making an environment for each of the locations that they're known to live in would make it a much more interesting and visually appealing exhibit. So The 3 subspecies for the different locations are as followed. Starting from the location where the door is, we are going to have the mainland subspecies, which is going to be mostly bamboo forest and really consisting of a more temperate and somewhat tropical, seeing how the areas that they would be seen in would be everywhere from Vietnam to India. Next in line, if we're going counterclockwise, is going to be the Formosan, or as modern day known as the island of Taiwan. The subspecies there would be in a more slightly temperate, still a bit tropical, but mostly somewhat temperate, and quite lush with lots of brambles, bushes, and whatnot. And the final section being the tropical locations of the subspecies in Hainan Island, which is just off the coast of Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin. For those of you who may be like, that sounds familiar. That's why America got in Vietnam. Anyway, not related, so we're going to continue moving on. So, on top of all this, what does the name pangolin mean? Well, it's actually the Malaya word for one who rolls in a ball, which, if you've noticed how these animals react to being interfered with in any way, yeah, that adds up. Seeing how their protective move is pretty much to curl up into a ball, similar to that of an armadillo. However, like I said, there really isn't any connection between the two. Now, the taxonomical name, the scientific name, which was coined by Carl Linnaeus in 1758, is Manus pentadactyla, which has a very interesting history, and I really want to get into this because it actually has to do with mythology, which I also love mythology. We'll see if maybe I'll get into some of that later on in my YouTube career. But as for now, Manus is actually the feminine version of the Mane, which is a chthonic deity in old Roman lore, which was supposed to represent the soul of a loved one that had passed away and returned to the land of the mortals. Now, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense onto why that's connected. Quite simply, the manes looked very bizarre, especially compared to, normal ghosts. And chthonic essentially means undead, underworld, Hades, that sort of thing. So the bizarre appearance of the pangolin is how it got that name. The second part of its name is not at all as interesting. As a matter of fact, pentadactyla just means 5 fingers. Because, you know what? Why make everything interesting? Just make half the name interesting. Why not? Now, not a lot about this animal is actually known, seeing how they are A, extremely shy, B, nocturnal, and C, critically endangered. As a matter of fact, the pangolin as a whole is actually the second most heavily trafficked mammal in the world. Take a guess on what the most common is down in the comments if you want to take a shot at it. You got your answer? I bet you're wrong, because it's actually people. Despite all the issues in this world, human trafficking is still a huge enterprise in the black market and in certain parts of the world. Unfortunately, slavery of many different forms is an absolutely abhorrent action that continues to thrive in all sorts of areas, even in the first world, just under our noses. As a matter of fact, in the United States and the UK, and all across Europe, there have been many, many stings that have led to the downfall of modern-day slave traders. But that is an unfortunate situation for a different time and a different place. Today we're talking about number 2, which is our pangolin friends. Now, the pangolin is trafficked for 2 major reasons. And one is the illegal pet trade, And the second, or the most prevalent, is, well, I'm sure you could guess, Chinese traditional medicine. In a few different forms of of Chinese folklore, the scales of the pangolin can be used to, well, we know the song and dance. It can be used to revitalize male virility, or cure cancer, or insert other miracle cure. It can't do any of that. As a matter of fact, the scales of the pangolin are made of the exact same material your fingernails are made out of. It's just thick and, extremely dense. Now, that hasn't stopped people from slaughtering these animals in the millions to an extent that every single nation in Asia, outside of the just general conservationist legal systems, like all across the world, they've all set their own laws ever since the 1970s. And I'm going to give you a short list. You can look into these on your own time, because there's a lot to go through, and I don't have enough time to get into the weeds of it all. But in chronological order, they were made a protected species in India in 1972, in Nepal 1973, in Hong Kong in 1976, the first time in China in 1989. Pretty much to give you an idea, at least with the Chinese law, it was not a direct, extreme stance. It was just, hey, you'll get fined if we catch you with pangolin meat, or a pangolin at all. Some of the other nations do have more stringent laws, but China comes up a few times for different reasons, so that's why I made manipulation there. In 1990, Taiwan followed suit. China doubled down in 1992, as did Thailand, the Chinese pangolin to the protected species. Myanmar in 1994. And gradually, between 2000 to 2020, China had constantly raised its concern until, like I said, 2020, where it is the highest degree of punishment for this sort of crime. I don't know exactly what that would be, but it's communist China. Who knows? Maybe it's just straight death. I didn't look too far into it, I'll be honest. If you would like to, feel free. And then in 2012, Bangladesh had added the animal to its protected species registry. Now, that doesn't mean the trade is just in China and Southeast Asia. As a matter of fact, the trade of pangolins had been seen all across the world and stopped in all across the world. Even parts of the United States and Europe have seen the importation of meat and pangolin scales, all for whatever reason they would need them. It's really a confusing situation for me, because I don't believe too much in mysticism. It's just not my gig. But it has led to many, many arrests and many people thrown in jail. As a matter of fact, most recently, there were entire shipments of pangolin meat and scales found in seized cargo vessels in the Philippines, Indonesia, and some on their way to Australia. Now, other than what I just explained, obviously there's still the deforestation and just general hunting issue that goes on with the pangolin, but out of everything, I feel like that's the low end of the, worry here. So, with all that said and done, we talked a bit about the pangolin, its conservation, and its history, or lack thereof. I am kind of rushing through this one a bit more than usual, but that, like I said, I'm kind of in a bit of a crunch. I usually take a day to do each of these different parts of the process. Can't do that. Kind of have to do 2 in a day. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. If there's anything you would like to know, feel free to leave a comment. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And if there is anything you would like to see when it comes to the next week's episode, that being the clouded leopard, feel free to let me know. I kind of have a plan for the way that's going to look, and I do hope it comes along well. But if there's anything you'd like me to add, like I said, let me know. Until next time, touch grass, hug your loved ones, drink water, and stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.